I think that what's most surprising about it is just how powerful it is
Yeah.
and the intensity it has in terms of its influence over our lives. In the modern world, we focus on rationality, and rationality is miraculous and amazing. Rationality is what has given us modern technology, modern medicine, all the comforts of modern life. It's what's made humankind the masters of the earth. But I think that rationality has given us so much that we appreciate so much. We've become enamored with it, and we've lost sight of the other side of human nature, and that is irrationality, things like desire and emotion and passions. And as rational as we may think that we are, those irrational instincts can overwhelm us at a moment's notice. And we say things like, oh my gosh, I don't know what got into that person, got into them, as if they're somehow being possessed by some outside force. Or we see people who are very, very intelligent, very successful, and through one incomprehensible bad decision, they completely ruin their lives. So we need to be respectful of these irrational forces within us, because if we're not aware of them, if we're not able to work with them productively, they will ambush us. And sometimes that can have devastating consequences.
Yeah, the unconscious, as you like to say it, it's not the not just the subconscious, but the unconscious, a different way of looking at it. I think a lot of people are unaware of the role that it plays in our lives. But as you said, and I've dove into it a little bit more in your work, that a lot of the jealousy or hatred or any of the really negative emotions we like to suppress come from our unconscious. It's not like we really have a choice to like have them show up in our lives. So how can we almost I know when you were writing The Molecule of More, that's when meditation really came into your life, but is there anything else that has allowed you to be more grounded and not take more control over that unconscious? Because of course, again, as I just said, we don't really have the control over it, but almost build a better relationship with it.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that the cultivation of something that psychiatrists call the observing ego is
Mhm.
helpful. And what that means in some ways is to take a step back from what's going on in your brain and observe it and accept it without necessarily identifying with it.
Mhm.
So, for example, if I'm driving and somebody cuts me off, I don't like that. I'm not good behind the wheel when it comes to controlling my emotions. Somebody cuts me off, and maybe to add insult to injury, they reach out the window and give me the finger. I'm going to feel angry.
Mhm.
And I can do one of two things with that anger. I can identify with it. I can say, this is me. I'm angry. I'm furious. I need to act on this to express myself. Or I can say, this is emotion I'm experiencing. And I have a choice what to do with it. The worst thing to do with it is to disavow it, to say, this is a bad emotion. I'm a good person. I'm going to pretend I didn't have it. I'm going to suppress it. The problem with that is that when you push it down into the unconscious by pushing it out of consciousness, it becomes autonomous. And that's why sometimes we may do things that are completely uncharacteristic of who we think we are, because we've pushed away the negative aspects of ourselves. The best thing to do is to accept it and say, this is part of me. It's not part of me I like, but there's lots of parts of me, physical and psychological, that I don't like. I can choose what I'm going to do with this. I can choose to act on it. I can choose to not act on it. But what I shouldn't choose to do is to try to not experience it.
Mhm.
So the observing ego allows you to fully experience both the positive and the negative without identifying with it. It's taking that one step back.
I think the idea of not identifying with your thoughts, your the way that you feel about yourself, all of it has such a massive role. Working with clients daily basis, a lot, I would assume, frequently. How do you help people stop identifying with their idea of themselves? Because the emphasis of this podcast really is to kind of break down people's stories and the works that they put into the world to help other people really unlearn the things that they need to unlearn. And the core of that is our idea of ourself, which holds so many of us back. So how do you almost help people detach from who they think they are so that they can create a better life stepping into who they desire to be, really?
Yeah. So one thing I'd like to point out is that I think that the way Carl Jung understood psychology is an absolutely wonderful way for healthy people to grow.
Mm.
I don't think it's a good way to help people suffering from mental illnesses get back to a healthy place. And the reason is that the kinds of things that Jung was writing about um, were very powerful, potentially very dangerous forces. And so when we start to open up the gateway between the conscious and the unconscious, frightening things can come through. And you want to make sure that you have the strength of your conscious mind to be able to handle those wild instinctual animals that are part of the human condition. And you mentioned meditation. Maybe we can talk more about that later. That's one way to strengthen the mind and be ready for this onslaught. So I'm not going to do this kind of work with people who are in crisis or who are struggling. But for people who've gotten to a healthy place and they are ready for the painful experience which growth represents, the first step is to really try to come to terms, try to almost make friends with the parts of yourself that you've been pushing away. And that means that just try to, you want to make friends. You can't control these things and you want to make friends with them. So if you want to make friends with another person, where do you start? Well, the most powerful thing you can do is to listen. And listening sounds very simple, but it's actually extremely difficult. Often when we're having a conversation with someone else, we're not really giving them 100% of our attention. We're maybe thinking about what we want to say next. Maybe we're even thinking about what we're going to make for dinner or what's going on at work. But if you do give someone 100% of your attention, it has a very powerful influence on the relationship. Charismatic people know this. And charismatic people are often described as making you feel like you're the only person in the room because they're giving you that 100% attention, and it's a powerful experience. So if you want to make friends with these more bestial, instinctual forces within you, the first step is to just listen. Pay attention to the emotions that come up. Pay attention to spontaneous ideas. When we think of thought, we often think of voluntariness. I'm going to think about this report I have to write, or I'm going to think about what I'm going to buy at the store. In fact, the vast majority of thoughts that we have are not chosen. They just pop into our mind. Sometimes we'll follow up on those thoughts. Other times we'll ignore them. I would say try to pay a little bit more attention and be curious. Ask yourself, why did I just have that thought? Why did that pop into my mind? I haven't thought about that in years and years and years. Why now? So the first step in forging this powerful, good relationship with the unconscious is listening, getting to know who it is.